Welcome to the Degenerate Dillon podcast, where Dillon has you covered with everything from spreads to futures to prop bets. Follow him every weekday as we pick daily best bets using stats, analytics, and a little bit of luck. Now here's your host, Degenerate Dillon himself, Dillon Nelson.
Hey everybody, welcome back into another episode of Degenerate Dillon podcast. We have Tye Richardson of ESPN Arkansas with us. How you doing, Tye?
Dillon, appreciate you having me, man. I'm excited to talk a little college basketball today.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to dive straight in to this Saturday's college basketball. We have a huge Big 12 matchup in the way of OU and West Virginia. West Virginia is coming off a big win and an upset of Chris Beard's Texas Tech team Tuesday. Who do you see winning this game and why?
Well, let's start out with, you mentioned Chris Beard, the ejection that transpired earlier this week. I mean, he got every bit of that, didn't he, Dillon? I mean, like the sitting on the floor, the fist bumping, Bob Huggins, and just all the antics that went into him getting tossed was phenomenal, right?
I agree. It's always nice to see a Bobby Huggins team playing some good defense, you know?
Yeah, West Virginia, Press Virginia, they've always been really fun to watch. Dylan, I would say that even coming off that win, my roommate is an Oklahoma Sooner guy. His father went there, and I mean they've had some big time wins this year. You think about the Texas win that they had earlier this year. When I have watched them, they've looked good, and I know Austin Reeves was out for a brief period of time. They didn't have him when they played Alabama, and he made the statement earlier this week that he thinks Reeves is one of the better players in the Big 12, and I like to mess with him a little bit. And I was like, he's not. But I mean, Reeves is one of the better players. And you think about Lon Kruger as a whole, as a basketball coach, consistency. And I know with them going to the Final Four with Buddy Hield a few years back, I picked him to win the national championship that year. They came up very short against Villanova. I think Oklahoma takes this one. Now, it's kind of weird, college basketball, we don't have the lines at this point in time, which I wish. I know college football puts them out either Sunday or Monday, depending on the game, sometimes Saturday night, depending on how quick it rolls around Vegas or overseas. But I wish they had it quicker for us, Dylan, to get the college basketball lines to us faster so we could be more, as you call, degenerates when it comes to gambling.
Absolutely. And it is for all the listeners that are listening right now, it's 2:45 in the afternoon on Friday, so unfortunately we do not have the lines as the show's going on. I'm going to guess that West Virginia might be favored in this game at home, not by much, maybe a point, 2 points. If that is the line, Tye, who do you see covering that line?
I think Oklahoma is going to win that game, so I'm going to go Oklahoma in covering. You paid a lot more attention to lines than I do. Man, Dylan, my sophomore year of college, I was gambling every single week and looking at lines more consistently and stuff. To be honest, man, I still love to talk about lines and I still love to talk about gambling and betting. I bet occasionally straight up with someone, but man, to be honest, I don't have a bookie. I don't bet through a website. It's just been so long since I've done that. But with sports gambling growing, I know it's not legally online in Arkansas per se yet, and I know there's certain other restrictions, but it's going to be very, very fun when like gambling just became legally in Tennessee, like sports gambling. And I'm curious to see when the FanDuels, the DraftKings, and all these big time gambling websites get a hold of Arkansans, what ends up actually happening in these upcoming years. I don't know what the timeline on that is, but it's going to be very interesting when it does happen.
Well, a quick update for the listeners, too, that are in the state of Arkansas. Sports wagering itself is legal in Arkansas. The Racing Commission owns the rights to the sports wagering in the state of Arkansas. So you can wager in Oaklawn at the casino, but that is the only location as of right now. Hopefully we can get that moved on, at a later date, and we can actually start gambling legally here in the state of Arkansas. I don't know about you, but when you gambled, what site did you use?
Bovada.
That's me
Bovada
too.
Back in the day. And it's a little difficult to receive your money and how it got about. I don't know. It's just a weird situation, Dylan. So I have stayed away for that from quite some time. I want to say that sophomore year would have put me in 2014, 2015. So it's been about 5 or 6 years since I was betting consistently. And I've had the casino run or two where I've lost $800. So there's certain, again, I love to talk about this side of sports, but I'm not necessarily just going head first when it comes to this type of action, man.
Yeah, nowadays they've got like you can withdraw into a Bitcoin wallet, and then you can trade that via cash. So it's gotten a lot easier besides getting checks, in the mail, and you have to wait 10 days or whatever. But yeah, to get back into the game, the OU West Virginia game, you picked OU to win straight up, so that would be a money line bet. You're going for the profit. I'm going to take West Virginia to cover whatever spread comes out, 1 or 2 points. I like West Virginia at this game at home, playing the Bobby Huggins defense.
Hey, listen, that's I would hesitate to call it safe bet, but West Virginia's got a really good basketball team. The best West Virginia team that I got a chance to watch had to be in that 2010 Deshaun Butler team that fell to Duke in the Final Four that year. But typically, I mean, you think about Javon Carter, I felt like he was in Morgantown for 10 years. Like Bob Huggins has just had that guy or two here and there that has been just a sturdy, steady ball player for them. Javon Carter stands out. I mentioned Deshaun Butler. There's a guy that I can't think of his name. I'm looking at his face, but I cannot think of his name for the life of me. But there's nothing wrong with taking Press Virginia in this one. And I will say this, Dylan, my cousin went to West Virginia for a little bit, and she told me she has never seen drinking like in Morgantown prior to football games. So at some point in time, I want to make my way to those mountains and watch a football game out there.
Sounds like a true degenerate college right there.
Exactly, man. And it's the Degenerate Dillon Show, so it fits right into the wheelhouse.
Let's not forget about Gabe Osaboyan there in West Virginia, the ex-Razorback, too, being the utility man there for Bobby Huggins.
It was so odd to see him immediately cleared, right? I just remember like it popped up and he gets eligible. He transfers. When I first saw his transfer to West Virginia, I was like, okay, same kind of style with Mike Anderson that he was implored at Arkansas. What's this going to look like? Is he going to play? And you mentioned him kind of being an all-around guy. I don't know if he's ever going to reach what could be his ceiling. I don't know how high that ceiling is, but sometimes you just have to have a guy that can fill up the stat sheet, not necessarily just with points, but with other categories. And I think Gabe's found it. He seems to enjoy it there. I mean, you or I have not talked to him personally about that, but when you have a Razorback that it doesn't work out for, you'd like to see him have success in another place. And I think Gabe's run in Morgantown, I think you can say it's been a success. It's not been doing like way over the top, or he hadn't transferred him to an All-American or anything, but I would call that a success.
Well, and to be honest with you, my ceiling wasn't extremely high watching Gabe play under Mike Anderson, but
yeah.
He does something for West Virginia that West Virginia obviously needed, filling in that utility man slot. So good for him, and I hope everything works out for him and his future. Moving on to the next game, Rick Barnes and crew visit Baton Rouge and the LSU Tigers in a matchup that could have the SEC tournament seeding repercussions. LSU has been underwhelming, to say the least, after starting the season 10-2. Mm-hmm. Tennessee, however, has won 4 of its last 5, including beating a good Kansas team by 19 in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. Does LSU get back on track, or does Tennessee improve its seed and ranking on Saturday?
Did you watch the Texas Tech LSU game where I want to say LSU was up by 10 with a little over a minute to go or something like that, and then inexplicably Texas Tech goes on I want to say 12-0 run, and LSU loses the ball game. Whether it was turning the ball over, I know Cameron Thomas got it slapped out of his hands by Mac McClung. LSU is as talented as it gets on offense. You think about Darius Days, Trent Wofford, Cam Thomas, who's one of the better freshmen, not just in the SEC, but college basketball, Javonte Smart. Those 4 dudes alone, Dylan, they can stack up with any 4 in college basketball, if you ask me. But the Achilles heel of this basketball team all season long has been defense. And while they can hang with anyone scoring, in order to be an elite college basketball team, you can't just skirt by on the defensive end. All that being said, after I just said all that, I'm taking the LSU Tigers because I'm almost willing them to win. You're tied right now, Arkansas, with LSU and Tennessee. Missouri's right behind you at, 6-4? Arkansas 7-4, tied with Tennessee and LSU. If LSU beats Tennessee and you somehow, some way find a way to beat the Missouri Tigers, that puts you all at a tie. LSU's got the tiebreaker at this point because they would have the win, but you still get to play the Tigers near the end of the season. That's why I'm going with LSU, not because everything you just listed about Tennessee playing as well as they have been, that's all fine and dandy, and those are just irrefutable facts that I can't really combat. But this pick is from the heart, which you know how that heart picks kill you in gambling. So if I actually put some money on this, Dylan, it would not go well.
There's a reason that I don't ever bet on my teams. Me and my wife go to
never.
Me and my wife go to Vegas at the end of every year. At least we have the last 4 years. And every time I can get a chance to bet on my team in Vegas, I do it and I lose. The last game that we actually played Missouri, I was in Vegas. And I put $300 on the Razorbacks to win that game. And we absolutely, everybody knows what happened in that game. But yeah, I'm going to take Tennessee to win this game, and I think Tennessee wins it with ease. I don't see LSU getting back on the track, and I know for us Razorback fans, that sucks because we want to take over that number 2 seed and get that automatic bye in the SEC tournament. But I definitely see Tennessee beating LSU in this game pretty handedly.
Well, listen, again, kind of like the last game we picked, I can't really just combat you with all these hard facts. I will say LSU did get a pretty good win against Mississippi State by 14. It was either Wednesday night or Tuesday night, I'm forgetting. But I hope I'm right because that would help Arkansas in the standings moving forward. But they also have a very tough game tomorrow against Missouri Tigers at 3:00.
Yeah, and we'll move over to that game right now. And obviously we don't have the line for the Tennessee game or we'd go over that. But I will get the lines out for everybody that's listening. I will get the lines out on our Facebook page at Degenerate Dillon Podcast tomorrow for all you guys on the games that me and Tye are covering. But yeah, we will shift over to Arkansas visiting Columbia and the Missouri Tigers in what hopes to be a revenge matchup for Arkansas. Arkansas is a different team than Missouri saw back in early January. Missouri's coming off a really bad loss to Ole Miss on Wednesday. Can the Hogs pull off an upset here and improve their potential seeding in March?
We talked about this relatively extensively on the Morning Rush, and there's a lot of factors that are going to play into this game tomorrow that went in Missouri's favor this past time they played. That's the worst game Arkansas's played at home this season. It's the only game they've lost. Jeremiah Tillman went for 25 and 11. Pinson had, I believe, 23 in that basketball game. A lot of those point productions because Justin Smith wasn't on the floor. That was either the first game he was injured or the second game. And the team looked like a shell of itself without him. Now, it didn't help that you played Missouri, LSU, Alabama. Oh, was he back for Bama? I think he was back for Bama.
He's back for Bama. He's first game. Like 20 minutes. Yeah,
first game back, but he still wasn't himself. And Tennessee without him. But they actually held their own against the Vols. I think his presence is a massive, big deal in this basketball game. You look at some other areas. The 5-game winning streak this team's on. Longest winning streak since 2017 in the Southeastern Conference. And I say 5-game winning streak, 5-game conference winning streak, which is the longest right now currently in the SEC. That can continue, Dylan. But it's the show me state, right? Missouri's the show me state. Show me something, Arkansas basketball. Show me that these wins that you've strung together, which have been against mediocre basketball teams for the most part and lackluster, aren't just a fluke. Show that these wins actually mean something. Go to Columbia tomorrow and get the win. We did our Fence Man Friday picks this morning, Dylan, and I went with Arkansas. Now, like you mentioned, we don't have the line. What would you say if you had to guess? Missouri's going to be fair, but like 4? Like, is that a good guess?
Yeah, I would say within the 3 to 6 margin. I mean, Vegas has still, since COVID has been out there, Vegas has still given people their 3 to 4 points at home. So I would suspect that just at a neutral court that Missouri would be favored by a point or two. So I'm gonna say Missouri's probably favored by 5 or 6 opening this afternoon.
Give me the points then, because I don't know. I picked Arkansas today, but I would be a lot more confident about getting the points. And I don't know if I can definitively say, Dylan, that they're going to win outright, but I think I'm a lot more confident if Arkansas is getting kind of that back end of your prediction, that 5 to 6 point range, because this is going to be a close basketball game. I think Missouri might win it, but it's going to come down to the waning moments. If Arkansas can stay with it. Now, I know you probably watched the Alabama-Missouri game this past Saturday. Mizzou's up the entire game. All of a sudden, Alabama comes roaring back. Herb Jones has a chance to either tie or win it, and he missed that layup, and Missouri held on, but they almost blew that game. And I can't imagine how ticked off Conzo Martin and company would be. One thing that scares me, Dylan, if you're Arkansas, the last time you played Missouri, they came off a 20-point loss to Tennessee, and they came in determined and just smacked you. Now they're coming off a 21-point loss to the Ole Miss Rebels on the road. Ole Miss is not that good of a basketball team. Offensively, they haven't been able to score all season. How motivated is this Missouri Tigers team going to be? I'd say it's pretty high.
Yeah, and you just talked about Ole Miss not being a very good offensive team, but yet shot almost 60% the other night against Missouri, which is odd because Missouri is such a good defensive team that it was weird to me that. And I didn't watch the whole game. I'm an early bedtimer, so I didn't get to watch the whole game. But I did watch the replay, and it seemed like Ole Miss just had one of those nights where you just make everything and anything.
And that's what they did. And I really like, I think, is it Devontae Shuler? I know his last name is Shuler. He could jump out of the gym, man. He's just got a really good-looking shot. And I got a chance to watch Kermit Davis while he was coaching at Middle Tennessee State. I should probably pay more attention to Ole Miss now, considering they're in the SEC. But I liked him. And the team with, let's see, it was the team that beat Michigan State. And I'm looking at this guy's face right now, and I cannot think of his name. It's not Ralph something, but those Middle Tennessee State teams were fun to watch. I'm wondering, though, Dylan, if that can ever translate to the Pavilion on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday nights in Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, when was the last time that Ole Miss was good at, like, really good at basketball? Can you remember?
Really good. And even though what the Marshall Henderson team, did that team go to the round of 32, maybe Sweet 16? I want to say they beat Wisconsin, if I remember that right. But
I mean, really, even with that team going to the round of 32 or Sweet 16, were they that good?
No. You're spot on with your assessment of Ole Miss basketball. And that's the great thing about being an Arkansas Razorback fan when you have a Ole Miss friend that likes to jab you about this and that. Because even when their football program was winning those games against Alabama, still lost to you back-to-back years. Even when their baseball team was as good as it was 2 years ago and they came into Baum-Walker Stadium, you smashed them game 3. Ole Miss football, basketball, and baseball. I want to say they only had one College World Series appearance since like 1976. Their football program has never won the SEC West, never won an SEC championship, which is just even with Archie Manning. How do you not win an SEC West title with Archie Manning? And the basketball, I can't even give you a stat on their basketball program, Dylan, because that's how irrelevant it is. It is, and you probably have an Ole Miss fan or two from Fayetteville High. It is just fun to stick it in the crawl, those SOBs, because they're cocky for no reason. None. It makes no sense. And yet they just have this arrogance about them that oozes from every part of that fan base, from Vaught Hemingway to the Pavilion to what's their baseball stadium, Swayze Field to the Grove. It's just, there's no reason for them to be that entitled based on their sports program's track records.
And especially, I don't know if you've been to Oxford before. Have you been to Oxford?
I have, but I will say, Dylan, I didn't experience like I should have That was my junior year prior to turning 21. I was working that weekend for the Arkansas Traveler, and I did not go out because I did not have an ID. And that will, the next time I go, hopefully this season, knock on wood, I'm experiencing Oxford the right way. And that means at the library, that means chicken on a stick, that means the whole 9 yards, man.
Yeah. I've been to Oxford. I've done the whole 9 yards. It was a good experience. Don't get me wrong, but I believe the game that we had, it was the Chad Morris game whenever Cam Curl took it, 70, 60 yards. Me and my wife went to that game.
Okay.
Boy, it was hotter than hell. It was hot. I don't know if I'll be back to Mississippi after that experience. Stuck together, but
what's the phrase us Arkansans always use? Thank God for Mississippi.
Thank God for Mississippi. We'll get off the Mississippi hate train real quick, and you never told me. Oh, you said you'd taken Arkansas tomorrow.
Arkansas on the points. The points is the key part of that. I don't know if I have the gall or the guts to pick them straight up. I'm too hesitant because Missouri is a good basketball team.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take Missouri and the money line and try to profit like you did the OU West Virginia game. I think Arkansas wins this game by 5 or 6 points. I think Justin Smith is that X factor that you were missing the first time around. And I just don't think Arkansas shoots the ball as just terribly as they did the first game against Missouri.
Yeah. And to your point about shooting, Dylan, one of the things that they've kind of backed off on is 3-point attempts. They were 7-28 in that game, if memory serves me correct. They're not going to shoot 28 threes tomorrow in Columbia. They're going to get to the rack. They're going to try and get the big man in Missouri in foul trouble. You're going to see a lot more aggression out of this team. It is amazing to me. And I know they got out-rebounded. Points in the paint, Bo, they outscored Kentucky points in the paint. And I know that Kentucky was on fire from 308th in the country heading in that game. All of a sudden, they're the Golden State Warriors. It made no sense. But I think Arkansas is going to be very aggressive, and that's going to lead to a lot of second chance points and points in the paint tomorrow.
And I love that about Arkansas, too, that they really haven't had that game this year where you could say that they just went off and had this amazing shooting performance. They've just been consistent all year, other than the games that they, the few games here and there that they've started out a little slow, or they just had a really bad game in that little small stretch of the season. They've just been consistently good since getting Justin Smith fully healthy and Jalen Williams and Devontae Davis playing good again. So I'm excited as an Arkansas fan, as a homer, to watch this game tomorrow. I think Arkansas wins it. I think they win it comfortably in Columbia, Missouri. But we'll move on from that. If I could, before I let you go, let me get your favorites and your sleepers for March Madness this year, starting with your favorites.
I was thinking about this week when you sent the rundown, and this is going to sound really lame, but every time I've watched Baylor play basketball this year, they have just been so balanced. My dad's an alum there. He's watched every single game. I haven't watched a lot, but even when they went up against the likes of Texas Tech or Texas, who has some talented players, think about Mac McClung, Greg Brown for Texas. There are just so many talented players in the Big 12 Conference, and I'm seeing this Baylor team just continuously produce on both offense and defense. So many weapons in Scott Drew's arsenal. I would go there for favorite. Did you want the sleeper too, or just favorites at first?
Sleeper. You can give me.
Let me give you two. And I don't know, because they're blue blood football. Does Ohio State count as a sleeper in basketball? They're pretty highly ranked, right? I couldn't tell you exactly where they are. Can you say that?
They're 18-1, so we can call that a sleeper.
Okay, that would be one. I guess just for fun, mid-major, St. Louis, Travis Ford, just to toss that out. To me, this is the year we were discussing before I came on. This is the year that someone comes out of nowhere and does it, right? Like when you think college basketball, you don't think of the Baylor Bears. Gonzaga has kind of earned that reputation the last couple of years. You think about Zach Collins in the NBA, Jalen Suggs, who could potentially be the number 1 draft pick this year. They've moved. They're not a blue blood yet, but they're basically on the fringe. This is a year where you could see just someone who either consistently Power 5, it's Power 6 in basketball, is middle tier to upper tier, but not in that blue blood echelon yet, which kind of, Dylan, you were talking about, you kind of like, because a lot of times we go into the year and there's, 8 teams that are going to win the national championship. This is the widest it's been open-wise. I mean, I can't factor in a year, but let's go back to 2011 when Butler and UConn played, and that would have been – Butler was a 5 seed in 2010. I want to say they were like an 8 seed that year, and UConn was a 5, if I remember that right. So you had like a 5 versus 8 going. This could be a similar year where we just have 2 teams. There might not be a 1 or a 2 in the national championship, maybe not even 3, which is almost it's unfathomable to think about. But that's what college basketball and college sports has really been as a whole. Well, I say that Tom Brady gets a 7th Super Bowl. That's whole true. But college basketball this year has been anything but predictable, and that leads me to believe the NCAA tournament could be the exact same way.
Boy, and I tell you, if it is what you're saying it is as far as March Madness is concerned, it's going to be such a fun one to watch.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be let's touch on Mike Anderson for a second at St. John's, 200-1 to win the NCAA tournament. You got $1 for that one?
I could throw $1 his way. Villanova win. I think they were number 3 the other night, which was pretty cool. At one point, you probably have an up-to-date record on that. They had won 5 or 6 straight. Have they lost? They broken that streak?
No, 6 straight.
Okay. So keep it going, Mike. Mike Anderson was great to me when I was in Fayetteville, Dylan. He's the classiest, one of the classiest coaches I've ever met. Just incredible to the Arkansas media in his time here. There's not a single Arkansas media member that would just go lambast him or rip him for something he said or did, because there's not any of that like background. So I have no ill will. I hope nothing but success towards Coach A. I hope him and Marshita keep on killing it up there in New York. And initially I was like, man, St. John's, that is a long way from home. And sure enough, year 2, it's looking good. And it's actually funny, Dylan, I play with his nephew basketball pickup most weeks. And I didn't know that Christian was Mike was Christian's uncle. And then it got brought up the other day. We had a laugh about that. Yeah.
And I personal story for me and Mike Anderson. I actually grew up right next door to Mike when he was an assistant for Nolan. I used to play basketball in my front yard with Yvonne, his daughter. And she used to kick my tail all over the freaking front yard. But yeah, I've been a huge Mike. He made me a ball boy once, actually. So that speaks to the kind of guy that Mike is. So I'm going to take right now, just because the conversation me and you have had, I'm going to take $5. I'm going to put it on St. John's 201.
Do it.
See what happens.
I love it. And what you just told, the story of, and the late Yvonne, it's another example in a sense that he's just, that to me is just cool. There's so many stories I've heard. I really did enjoy it. And because I was first started out in media then, and you know how coaches can be intimidating and stuff. Like Bielema was a DB. Like he just was. He had this cocky arrogance about him. He had earned it at Wisconsin. Sure as heck didn't earn it in Arkansas. Mike was never that way. And I enjoyed the interactions that I had with him, and other media members would say the exact same thing.
Speaking of cocky coaches that act out of turn to the media, what did you think of Krzyzewski's words for that student intern?
That's intimidating, right? And I want to say that was that kid's first game he was covering. I haven't read that story in a minute. He ended up calling to apologize. I think, listen, our generation, you're 2 years older than me, is coddled. The one coming up behind us is coddled. personally, after listening to that, he might have been a little harsh. But to me, it wasn't as grotesque and over the top as some people were making it, right? And he's an irritable 77, 70, whatever he is. I don't know how he's 70-something years old coach that has his ways, that's at a point in his career that he can pretty much say whatever he wants and get away with it. Apparently, what he said to that young kid was over the top. And I say kid, the kid's in college. Did you take it, Dylan, as harshly as so many others did? I didn't think it wasn't great, but to me, it was overblown a little bit.
I'm not one of those peoples that I'm not the participation trophy kind of guy. I'm the other way. You're either Ricky Bobby, baby, you're either first or you're last. You know what I'm saying? But no, I didn't take it in that kind of term. I thought he was a little blunt about it and maybe a tad bit of rude. But I mean, he's an old guy and his team that usually is performing at a tip top level is not performing that way this season. So, I mean, I'm sure he's just a little frustrated.
I'll give you a stat, and it's not mine. I'm forgetting the source, the origin. This past AP poll, the 13 winningest college basketball teams in the history of the sport were all unranked. Think about that. The top 13, the Dukes, the Kansases, the North Carolinas of the world, Syracuse, all these teams you're so used to consistently seeing being at the top, middle tier of the top 25, all unranked, Dylan. That to me just orchestrates what you were discussing earlier, how wild this season has been, which is if you're seeing that regular season, how can you pick a favorite heading in to the national championship? Like I just told you mine was Baylor. I'm like now rethinking what my thoughts should be based on what I'm saying. Like you said, dude, this NCAA tournament is going to be fun. We might have the most upsets betting lines wise and just numbers wise where they're seated that we've ever had. And that Friday coming up, I guess we're about a little over a month and a week out. It's going to be a good time, dude. Can't wait.
It's going to be good. And it's especially good when the Hogs are in it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It makes the world of difference to the people in the state of Arkansas. And when the Hogs are in March Madness, even if they only win a game, you know, it's still fun going in and watching the selection show. And I get goosebumps watching the selection show every time we're in it, you know, so that's just me.
I'll tell you what, Dylan, go back and watch the 1994 selection show. It's got Jim Nance. It's got Billy Packer. There's one other guy that's in the broadcast, and this is when Arkansas was, I want to say, a 1 seed. I should know that. Obviously, they won the national championship. That was 1 seed. Okay. And it's really cool because they played, I want to say, in Tulsa, and then they either played Dallas or Oklahoma City. I'm forgetting. I need to go back and watch it again. But if you like selection show stuff and you like nostalgia, you got to go back and watch that one, man.
Okay, will do. Well, we certainly appreciate you coming on the show, Tye. This is Tye Richardson of ESPN Arkansas, ESPN Radio. Tye, let my listeners know exactly what you got going on, man.
Dylan, I appreciate it, man. Appreciate the time. So I'm the host of The Morning Rush alongside Tommy Kraft from 6 to 9 a.m. weekdays on ESPN Arkansas. So up where Dylan is in Prairie Grove, it'd be ESPN 99.5, and the other station up there is 95.3. Fort Smith River Valley, it's ESPN 95.3 as well. It's also ESPN 96.3 in Hot Springs, Central Arkansas, 97.1 in Camden, South Arkansas, and then 104.3 in Harrison and Mountain Home. Those are where we're at. We're also on hitthatline.com, our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And then also been doing a podcast with different Arkansas sports media members called Trusting the Process. Mike Irwin joined me yesterday. We had an hour-long conversation about his life. It's been phenomenal. Mike Irwin, Richard Davenport, John Neighbors, Danny West, Phil Elson. We're going to continuously have on really good guests, and it's been a blast. So that's kind of me in a nutshell right now when it comes to sports media.
Well, I know I'm subscribed to everything that Hit That Line's got going on. I got to stay up to date on my Razorbacks.
It's a fun source, man. We've really started to grow the Hit That Line podcast network, and I think it's paid off in dividends. We're the #1 sports podcast network in the state of Arkansas. We consistently have the most listens. We have fun. We talk sports. We shoot the you-know-what. It's a good time. And if you hadn't got a chance to listen, just kind of like you're listening to the Degenerate Dillon Show right now, give us a shot, and I think you'll enjoy the content.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Tye. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely, Dylan. Appreciate your time, man.
Have a good day.